Saudi jets conduct multiple airstrikes against residential areas across war-ravaged Yemen as Riyadh continues its military campaign against its southern neighbor. In the latest attack, Saudi warplanes bombed residential areas in Al-Zahid district of Yemen's southern province. 5 people were killed in the attacks in Riyadh city of the same province. Saudi jets targeted a civilian car, setting it on fire. Saudi Arabia and its allies have targeted civilians almost on a daily basis since the war on Yemen began in early 2015. The aggression has so far killed over 14,300 Yemenis and displaced millions of others. Well, Saudi Arabia's assault on Yemen's port city of Hudaydah has led to a wave of displacement. Now, thousands of families have so far fled fighting near the city. The United Nations has once again warned about the humanitarian consequences of further military escalation in Hudaydah. Our correspondent Mohammed Al-Attab brings us more.
Saudi Arabia and its allies continue their deadly assault on Yemen's port city of Hudaydah, despite the United Nations' repeated warnings about serious humanitarian consequences. The Saudi airstrikes and deadly clashes near the western port city have so far forced thousands of families to leave their homes for safer places.
Such an offensive against a city with over 600,000 inhabitants is a gross violation of international law. Yemeni officials say unless a lasting and peaceful settlement is reached, people here will fight until they die honorably.
Ahmed's family is one of the families forced to leave their homes in Hudaydah.
The Saudi offensive against our city and possible street battles have forced me to leave my home and move my family to Sana'a. I do not know how I can manage there, as I have already lost my source of income here, but I do not have any other choice.
Meanwhile, on Thursday, the United Nations once again warned against further military escalation in Hudaydah, expressing concern about severe political and humanitarian consequences. Amnesty International has also expressed concern about Saudi Arabia's tightening of the blockade on Hudaydah, calling for targeting sanctions against those responsible for obstructing humanitarian assistance. Backed by Saudi-led airstrikes, Emirates forces and militants loyal to former Yemeni government launched the Hudaydah assault on June 13. The UN has warned that over 100,000 children could die in case sufficient aid is not provided. The warning comes that the lives of millions of Yemenis could be at grave risk due to Saudi Arabia's attack on the seaport city of Al-Hudaydah, which is responsible for 70% of imports into the war-torn country. Mohammed Attab, Press TV, from the seaport city of Al-Hudaydah.
Let's speak to Edward Corrigan. He's an international human rights lawyer, and he joins us via Skype from Ontario. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Corrigan. Now, over the course of the Saudi war against Yemen, this question has popped up a lot when we see images, the ones that we've seen today, as are there no red lines, no rules of war that Saudi Arabia adheres to when it comes to Yemen?
I would say the answer to that is no. The Saudis and the United Arab Emirates and their allies, but mainly the Saudis and the UAE, have been bombing civil infrastructure. I think last week they destroyed and attacked an education center. These are civilian facilities, and the attack just today, I guess, or yesterday, is that was on a residential area. Part of the problem is that the Saudi aircraft are afraid of attacking, military positions because they can get shot down. So they tend to focus on, soft targets where there's no defense, which of course means it's the residential areas. And they have been, systematically destroying the infrastructure in Yemen over the past 2 years. So you've got, horrific destruction of hospitals, water supplies, sanitation, even food production. All of these things have been attacked by the Saudis and their allies. So this is like a war against the people of Yemen, and it's it is a war crime because it's targeting civilians and also, preventing, medicine, gasoline, other food, other necessities from getting into the country, which is why the attack on the port Hudaydah is very, very important, where I guess the Hutus and the people who live there are fighting to defend their country and defending their homes. And the people who are attacking them are largely paid mercenaries by the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates. And they have, the Saudis and their allies have lost a lot, have suffered tremendous casualties, but the attack is still mounting now. It's going on for weeks. They're still fighting over the airport. The reports are mixed. Sometimes the reports that the Saudis and UAE are in retreat. Other times it says that they've taken the airport. But apparently the attacks now are getting into the residential areas of the city. So this puts, hundreds of thousands of civilians in a position of that they're very much at risk. So,
right, but Mr. Corrigan, let me just jump in there. There are clear human rights violations taking place there. There are clear violations of the rules of war and international law. However, at the same time, we are not seeing that urgency that this situation requires. We've seen more sessions, emergency sessions in the UN Security Council on, for example, Syria than on Yemen.
Well, the problem with the Security Council is that the United States, Britain, and France all have veto power, and they are involved up to the necks in the war in Yemen. There are British troops and French troops on the ground. The British and Americans also are providing reconnaissance, refueling planes, and supposedly they're also involved in the prisons. And the latest reports are that the UAE in particular, they're sexually assaulting prisoners using torture, other things. But the United Nations Security Council could not come to an agreement, and they had a closed door session, but I can pretty well guess for 100% certainty that it was the British, the Americans, and the French that prevented any sort of statement from coming out, and the Security Council for taking any action. The Red Cross, the United Nations wants to take Hudaydah as a neutral city and take over so that it allows food and medicines and other supplies to get into the people of Yemen. But until the parties on the ground agree to that, and of course the Hutus and their allies say they're going to fight to the death, and I don't see the same sort of energy or sort of commitment from the soldiers that are attacking Hudaydah. But in fact, the UAE lost one of their top officers just in the attack. So you're getting an awful lot. And there was, reports that the UAE and Saudi suffered massive casualties and a loss of equipment. But the war is grounding on, and it's amazing how the people of Yemen are resisting this aggression from Saudi Arabia. And
indeed, on that note, we're going to have to leave it there. That's international human rights lawyer Edward Corrigan joining us via Skype from Ontario. Mr. Corrigan, it's always great having you with us here on Press TV.
Analyst and Middle East expert Mr. Jalal Fayrouz joins us from London. Mr. Fayrouz, welcome to the program. Give us your perspective on the recent comments made by the Foreign Ministry spokesman of Iran. He's highlighted the inactivity and inaction of the United Nations and the international community in the face of the Saudi-led aggression against the people of Yemen.
Well, it's very, very sad to see the scene in Yemen going deteriorated more than all the 3 years old. What's going on is really a catastrophe. The only port of entry for humanitarian aid, Al Hudaydah, is being attacked by the Saudi and backed by the Americans, and no one seems to care neither about the children who are dying every day in huge numbers because of lack of food and because of lack of medication, and all the cholera is spreading there, and now all the bombardment from the Saudis on the Hudaydah city, which resulted in so many casualties, including women and children. For that reason, we have seen 2 days ago huge amount of people protest from Hudaydah protesting this and coming out to say if you want to have any war, have it far from the civilian neighborhood. it seems that the United Nations doesn't care, and it's being superseded by the United States not to interfere in this catastrophe which is going on. It is really a big shame of the whole world when you can see the world is caring about the football, but not caring about the blood which is being spread in Yemen. You have hundreds of thousands of people have been killed, and you can see how the situation is going down the drain. For that reason, just for the sake of protecting the people, the Ansarullah are firing some rockets into Saudi. Now, on the other side, you can see the United States condemning the some of the very convictional and very basic missiles which are being fired from Yemen, but they don't seem to see that all these high logistics, high technology missiles being fired on women and children and on civilian targets in Yemen. A marriage gathering just a few days ago was attacked by the Saudi Air Force, and one from the United Nations did not care to condemn at least this, to stop this nonsense which is going on in Yemen.
Analyst and Middle East expert Jalal Fayrouz joining us from London. Thank you, sir.